Hello again, Honky Tonks. A few things before I start my video. Number one, thanks to all my recent subscribers. I mean, even if you're just here to watch what I do, you know, every little helps. Also, I don't delete comments. I really don't. If they openly and obviously incite murder and violence, then yeah, I'll delete them. So I don't delete much. Otherwise, it's anything goes. You need to direct your concerns to the YouTube algorithm. That's the problem. Anyway, now I made a video regarding Peter Lynch last night. I dropped it this morning, and a few people in the comments, I've pinned one in particular, blaming Tommy Robinson, Nigel Farage, conspiracy theorists, QAnon. I'm not a fan of QAnon, by the way. That is utter horse crap, for what he did, and he blamed himself. And I do social media a lot. I'm everywhere apart from Facebook and Telegram. And I've noticed these same people on X, even though they're blaming Peter Lynch for what he did to himself, they reckon that Chris Kaba fella was murdered by the state. Now, they were both murdered by the state. One legally, the other one indirectly. Peter Lynch would still be with us. He'd still be attending protests. He'd still be shouting at police. He'd still be waving his so-called offensive placard, telling you who not to trust, and exercising his freedom of expression and his right to peaceful assembly, even though he was convicted of violent disorder. I mean, crazy. The same judge who convicted him of that, or sentenced him, let off a kiddie fiddler, and you know, it went easy on far worse crimes. It beggars belief. So back to this Chris Kaba fella. Like I said, both were killed by the state, one legally, the other one indirectly. Peter Lynch, of course, because he was incarcerated on the orders of Keir Starmer, who did interfere with the legal system and strong-armed local authorities to fast-track people like Peter Lynch into custody. He did that. That's a fact. Now, as for Chris Kaba, information has come to light that this wasn't very a nice man. Is the reason for him being not a very nice man good enough to kill him? Of course not. I know a lot of not very nice men. Do they deserve to be killed by the state? No. However, Chris Kaba, it turns out, gunned down a rival in a nightclub days before the police shot and killed him. Now, the rules of engagement are there for everyone's protection. Basically, not just the people with the weapons, but the people who you're thinking of shooting. Now, I was in the mob for 8 years, and I was in Ulster. I did 3 years in Ulster, and the rules of engagement were constantly changing. And I remember being taught about them by my NCOs at the time. And even though they'd give us scenarios and they'd explain the rules of engagement cards, word for word, there were 2 cards, reasons for arrest, I think, and rules of engagement for the lethal option. Even though they'd give us scenarios and they'd tell us what's on these cards, I think it was the yellow card, they'd never agree with our solutions. Say, a corporal would ask me, okay, a member of the IRA points his weapon, lifts his weapon, and points it at you, what do you do? My reason and logic then was, well, because of who that person is, his balaclava, his weapon pointing at me, I'd slot him. Am I right? Well, I don't know, it's completely up to you. It's your choice, it's your decision. Therefore, they took away the Ministry of Defence's and the Army's responsibility in all that. They teach you it, but not exactly when to use it. And I'd imagine it's the same for the armed police. I've got a mate in the armed police. He was in the prison service with me. Good bloke. And even he said, it's complicated as hell. It really is. You need to be, I mean, to make that decision in such a short time puts not only someone's life at risk, but your own freedom on your job. Hence why the armed police officer who shot Chris Kaba was put through the ordeal of a trial. He had to wait a few years, didn't he, for his trial, and he was found not guilty, and rightly so. I wasn't there, you weren't there, it was him. It was his decision, this guy, to shoot Chris Kaba. He thought his mate's life or his colleague's life was at risk. Chris Kaba was about to drive his car into him and kill him, so he took the lethal option and saved his colleague rather than the armed thug. And for people to go on there and unjustifiably compare the two, Chris Kaba to Peter Lynch, two completely different situations, even though they were both, of course, killed by the state, I think it's disingenuous of you. I really do. Both took a path in life. One resulted in his legal liquidation by the government or the state, the authorities, establishment, and the other one incarcerated, put in a position by the state, by the establishment, by the authorities, unjustifiably so. And so they put him in such a dark place that he allegedly took his own life. I hope I'm making sense here. I really am. I don't think you can blame Peter Lynch for taking his own life and then in the same breath on other social media claim that Chris Kaba was illegally shot dead or illegally murdered. I don't think you can do that. The situations speak for themselves. Chris Kaba was a violent man. He was on his way to do harm to someone else. He had a weapon on him. He rammed the police who surrounded him, and there is footage of him gunning down a rival in a nightclub. Peter Lynch wasn't violent. He had things to say. He never hurt anyone, no previous convictions. He wasn't going onto his way to get anyone harmed. And yet he too was snuffed out by the state. Do you see where I'm coming from here? There are two distinct differences. A violent crook and a guy who, I think the worst thing he did was shout at police, and that's it. Took part in a protest which was hijacked by violent men, as they do. I mean, I saw it myself. I was in Downing Street. The police weren't necessarily sending out snatch squads to grab instigators or people who were violent. They grab anyone in there. I was watching them. There were people stood there innocently and they just grab them. It was confusing. I never saw these people do anything, and yet off they went, carted off by the police violently. It's crazy, isn't it, how the law works? The law in this country is an arse. It really is. It's been manipulated by people now for their own political ends. But again, you know, Chris Kaba and Peter Lynch, two completely different men. One a danger to society, another a danger to no one. And yet they were both killed by the state. One directly, the other indirectly. I hope that makes sense to you. I hope you understand. I've been thinking about this all night, actually. I really have. And if it can happen to Peter Lynch, it can happen to you. Now, I do believe there are movements at the moment, from what I see on social media and elsewhere, to try and make Chris Kaba the next George Floyd and spark riots and violence, etc. But I think the one we should be protesting about is the death of a guy exercising his free speech. Not the guy on his way down to gun someone. You know, don't make these people saints, because they're not. They're anything but. Crazy, isn't it? Crazy. I've got a lot more to say, but my mind's a jumble. jumble. You know what I mean. My mind's a jumble at the moment. So again, I hope you understand. Anyway, there we go. Make of it what you will. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm past 49. Thanks for watching, and until the next time, Roger Trout. Hi, I'm past 49 off that video you just watched, and I want to thank you all for all the likes, comments and shares, but now it's time to hit that subscribe button.